All right, man. So we are live. Welcome back to the Virtual Millionaire Show, everybody. I have with me today a very special guest, Jason Griggs. What is up, my friend? How you
My
doing?
man, Mike, what's up, buddy? Thanks for
What's up?
having me on. I'm pumped to be here, man.
Yeah. I'm excited, man, because I think a couple years ago, I don't know, 3 years ago, did we meet?
Yeah,
Now?
yeah. I think right when you moved here.
Yep. So a few years ago when we met, everyone was talking about, Airbnbs and rentals and all of this stuff, and there was a lot of regulation in Henderson, in Las Vegas, and Clark County in general. And so I'm excited to learn about that and then share with others who may be either here or all over the country who may be facing some of these situations, and just kind of dive into it. But before we do that, um, if you guys are tuning into this live, share this out. This is free. We want people to know about this show, and so share this with a friend. We're gonna drop some fire today, so I hope you guys are ready. And for people who don't know who Jason Griggs is, man, fill them in. Who are you? A little bit about yourself, and how did you get into real estate?
Well, so I had a crazy route into real estate. I was a teacher. I was a phys ed elementary school teacher, and I kind of fell into real estate by accident. I coach a local high school team here for lacrosse, and one of the parents is a broker, a big broker here in Henderson. And I was like, I want to learn real estate. And I went through the process of buying my own house. Loved it. And the rest is history. I learned how to become an agent. And as I was doing that, I just fell in love with buying rental properties. And so that is now translated into my full life. That is what I do full time. I'm a full time investor as well as an agent, and I love just the grind of it, just finding properties that here in Henderson and now across the country, which I've expanded into, just trying to buy as many as I possibly can. And I kind of fell into the short term rental space by accident by doing this with the rental properties. And the saying I have is that the short-term rentals are long-term rentals on steroids. And what I mean by that is that the cash flow is just astronomically more. And so it's a lot more profitable and it's a lot more intriguing to get into that side of the business.
Yeah, man. So, like when I first started talking to you about your strategy, you were buy and hold guy, and you kept telling me, man, how good the cash flow is in Las Vegas, and it didn't click. I just couldn't quite wrap my head around it. I'm like, what do you mean the cash flow is good? Like, I come from a market of buying houses for $50,000 to $100,000, but you came from New York market, so in comparison, if you're comparing apples to apples, that's probably where that could kind of cash flow a lot better than maybe something in New York. But how are you getting your properties to cash flow? Like, what was your strategy initially before the shift to short-term rentals?
I was just good question. I was just buying because I didn't know anything about off-market stuff for the first 3 years of my career. I had no clue what wholesaling was. I had no clue what direct to seller was. And I was just buying properties off the MLS in the best location that I could possibly find with low HOAs, low taxes, but that I basically based it off of where people were moving in for the school district in Henderson. Everyone wants to go to Coronado High School. It's the biggest public school here in Henderson. And I just noticed through my lacrosse team that everyone was either moving in or moving out, needed a place to rent, and there was no rentals, and there was a high demand for this one little area. And so I just went heavy in this one particular area in Henderson. And so I was just buying them off the MLS, and I would get the commission and I would use that for my closing costs, and I would find a partner here and there to do it with, and I started managing them all myself, and I really learned the business inside and out. And it's not rocket science, Mike. You're just buying a place, and I was sprucing them up a little bit, nothing too crazy, put nice pictures, and I do a good job of vetting my tenants the right way so they can last a long period of time and create that relationship. And now those properties I bought 6 years ago are triple what they're worth now, what I bought them for, and I never sold it. And so one strategy that I do with my long term rentals is I buy down the mortgage, I pay down the mortgage as much as possible, and soon things will be paid off, and that's essentially your retirement forever. Because once those houses are paid off, nobody could take them from you. The market could crash tomorrow, and you still have those hard assets. And so that's it's funny because I've never shifted away from that. That's I don't know where it came from, but I just got into it. I was like, I'm just gonna hold as much real estate as I possibly can. I never over leveraged, and I just rent the hell out of them.
Yeah, man. I think it's awesome because for a reference, the people who aren't familiar with that area of town, like it's a very nice area. So your approach could have been go to the east side, buy these things for $100,000, deal with the headache tenants or whatever the situation may be. Maybe not as much appreciation, but cash flow in my mind seems like it might be a little bit better. Um, what kind of financing do you do to be able to still cash flow on these, like, because they were like $300,000 to $400,000 properties, right? Now they're
So
probably double or triple, like
y-
you said.
so
But
they were $240,000,
I
little
can't
three,
believe it.
four, and this is in 2016. So
Right,
and so you're putting 20% down, 40 something thousand bucks down, you get your commission. And so our my mortgage is $1,200. And now that the market rose since then, the rents also rose. And now I'm renting these things for almost $3,000 a month. And my mortgage is still $1,200. And so I'm probably cash flowing about $1,800 on just one. And this is a
right.
long-term rental. This isn't even a short-term rental. And so by me not selling that property and just hanging on, like, look, I have created a crap ton of equity in that, and I'm also creating a lot of cash flow. And so a lot of people aren't patient in real estate. And for newer investors, I would just say, like, gobble up a property a year that that you're going to hold on for a long period of time, and you can't lose.
No.
Like it could go down a little bit, but it's always going to rise back up. It's real estate, and so that's what I've done.
All right. So this is so true, right? Like, by the way, this is my business partner. Keep properties. So it took me 3 years to figure this out. We were flipping everything, and so by holding it, obviously you get the benefit of the tax advantage, you get the appreciation, you get so much to go along with that. So super smart that you started figuring that out right from the gate, because it took me years to figure that out. What I think is also very unique, man, is the fact that you were buying these right off the MLS. Like everyone was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, there's too much competition," and Jason's over here just like slinging these things on the MLS. So that blows my mind because obviously, for anybody who knows me, we find everything off market, 100%. We
Mike,
buy
I
at a
didn't even
discount.
know what off market was. I didn't like I swear to you, I got my license. I didn't know how. I didn't even know what wholesaling was. I didn't.
Right?
I just I was like, this is a nice house. I went and looked at it through the lockbox. It was vacant, and I would just put an offer in and buy it the old school way, I guess. And then
Yeah.
obviously it really changed when I learned how to market direct to sellers a little bit and make connections with wholesalers. That's when I really expanded because now I'm getting properties 25% off. And that's when you could really do some damage. And that's what I did.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, appreciation's nice when you can still refinance in a year and get your cash out. But what about when you buy a 25% discount and then the market still appreciates another
Y-
10%?
And that's what happened to me. I would say I bought my first five on market, and then everything since then was all mostly, I would say, 90% off market deals or through wholesalers. And that just the ability to know how to do those things is such a weapon, right?
Oh yeah.
That we know how to structure deals, we know how to communicate with the wholesalers of what we want, what we're looking for. And people just started bringing me deals. Like I had no problem paying an extra two, three, four, $5,000 to these wholesalers for a deal with 75 to $100,000 equity in it. And that's always been my strategy. I'll pay a little bit more for a better location, and that's what I did.
Yeah, I love that, man. And you're the king at networking, it seems like, when it comes to having the wholesalers respect and trust and bring you those deals. And so that's something I'm trying to get better about. So I'm curious, like, what has worked the best for you in building those relationships? It's kind of probably a rhetorical question, really, but I'm curious. Like, you seem to be crushing it at networking.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think like instead of like talking the talk, you got to walk the walk. And so these wholesalers, they're in a shifty business. So if they get a deal, like not all these wholesalers are killing it. So they need to make sure that they are selling it to a really strong buyer. And then when I show my portfolio, like, look, this is my portfolio. Like, I am a legit buyer. I will buy this thing if I say I'm going to buy it. And then your reputation is everything. If you back out, you're not going to have a good reputation. So I've made really good relationships with agents now and now wholesalers, and they just if they find something I want, then I'll go after it. And I have no problem paying a little extra. I think some people get greedy sometimes, or they're like really stubborn. They're like, "Oh, I'm not giving that person that extra three, four, $5,000 when it's like pennies on the whole grand scheme of the deal because you're holding this thing for so long, and it's going to bring you in thousands and thousands of dollars a month." So I have that kind of, I guess, mantra and mindset of that. Just don't sweat the small stuff, and it's worked out pretty well.
I would say. So from the long-term rental game, you've obviously transitioned pretty significantly. So we're going to talk a lot about Airbnb on this episode. So um, this is about to get really exciting because this actually got me so interested that I went out and just bought mine recently. Um,
So did I influence you a little bit to
you
do
may
it?
have
Because
influenced me a
okay,
lot.
good. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep. Yep.
I
So
I appreciate that.
I was
That's
dude, I
awesome.
was looking for one in Vegas because I wanted to find one out here, and it was just like it was either an HOA or like I'd find one. I'm like, this is the perfect one, no HOA, and they would be like just within that 1,000 feet or
Yep,
whatever.
I
The
remember you had one. I remember
yeah.
you had.
So
Yep, yeah.
like
It's
how have
tough.
you maneuvered to find how many do you have out here now?
So I have 8 out here. I have 9 total, and then I'm closing. Actually, I'm gonna have 11 total. I'm closing on one in Mississippi early next week. Creative finance deal.
Nice.
So yeah, so the short-term rentals have been amazing, and I got into it through a property manager in my office. His name is Sean Cunningham, and he basically figured out the best way to manage short-term rentals. He manages hundreds of long-term rentals. Gave it a shot a few years ago of managing a few short-term rentals, and then really systemized and created a full business of doing short-term rentals. And short-term rentals are another animal. They are so much work. They are basically your each house is a business. It's not a passive, it's a business. And sometimes the business does well, sometimes the business doesn't do well. And there's seasons, and there's times where it's up, and there's times when it's down, and there's constant guest turnover, and things break. So the first thing, whenever I talk about these things, that I tell everybody, it's work. It's not like easy 1, 2, 3, just put furniture in a house and throw it on Airbnb. It's a constant communication struggle with either your guests or your property manager or your cleaners. And if you do it, if you set it up the right way and you really put some love into the place and make it look really nice and care about your product, it's an amazing investment.
So is that the key to standing out and staying more occupied versus the ones who aren't? Obviously, that's the name of the game, right? You want to be occupied.
Definitely. I mean, it's just like it's a hotel, right? That's the best comparison that you can take this business to. So when you go to a hotel and you go to the Win versus the Circus, you can see why the Win charges $700 a night and the Circus charges $60 a night. And so every rental property that I own, I've always spruced it up. I've always made it look as nice as it possibly can because you want people to come back and you want people to enjoy your house. Now the problem is that people get lazy and they get cheap. And so we found a real niche of with our short-term rentals that if we really spent the extra money and blow it out of knock it out of the park, we can really take advantage of charging a premium. And so we've created houses that there's nothing like them in Henderson and Las Vegas. And so now it blew up and it's kind of taken a life of its own. And now I'm going to take the same model and hopefully replicate it, not just here, but in other parts of the country.
Yeah, yeah. So when guys, by the way, if you don't know, if you have not seen Jason Griggs Rentals, first of all, you absolutely have to. I'm talking like mansion, extravagant, basketball courts. I mean, you name it. Like the list goes on and on and on. Dude, you have some of the absolute coolest Airbnbs. I wish I could share my screen right now and show people, but at the end, obviously, they can follow you and find more about
Yeah.
those.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike. They could go to griggsvacationrentals.com. That's my website for all my properties that I have, and you could book directly from there. But it's not brain surgery. So what we did was we looked at some Airbnbs in the area we were buying, and I just wasn't impressed with any of them out around. And I'm like, if I was going on vacation to Las Vegas, what would I want? I would want a basketball court. I want pickleball. I want a pool, hot tub, barbecue, ping pong, beer pong, it, like a ultimate vacation place. And so that's what we're doing now. We're just trying to build the craziest houses that we possibly can. And it's a little scary. You're buying a big house and it's a big mortgage, but when you build something and you're confident in it and there's nothing like it, then you could hit a home run. And that's what I feel like we did.
Yeah. So one thing about that is you said it's very cash intensive, especially when you're buying the house for the million and then you're putting a couple hundred grand in it or whatever you're doing. And so, how do you fund those deals? Obviously, you could use your own cash, you could partner. I know there's probably a variation of different things that you can do, but they are cash intensive when you're putting that much cash out. It is very scary because I'm thinking like, oh shoot, the cash flow these guys are getting, I need one. I'm financially free.
Right.
It's all
That's what
good.
everybody says, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to do Airbnb, but nobody wants to furnish it the right way. That's my line. So to answer your question, the first few that I did, I just bought with regular conventional financing. They weren't that expensive of homes, 4 to 500,000. We would put the 20% down, and then we would just pay cash for the furniture and the setup and the labor. But when you buy $1 million house and a $1.5 million house, it gets a little bit trickier. So what we did, we used hard money. I partnered with Tyler Hubbs on my two big ones. He's absolutely incredible with his design work and his construction background. And I knew I needed somebody that just isn't a scared little girl when it comes to buying a 9,000 square foot house and remodeling it. And I was that person. I was scared crapless to do it. And he just walked in and he's like, I got this, no problem.
Shout out to
And
Hubs. Here's modeling a couple $1 million home in Seven Hills right now.
yep, the guy, he is just so talented. He's gonna have his own TV show, I think, one day. I'm just so pumped that I got to do this with him, and obviously, I'm partnered with him on it, so we're gonna be together for a while. But he's so talented, and so yeah, that's what we bought with hard money. Then we refinanced it with a commercialized loan, a
Okay.
commercialized rental loan.
Got it. Got it. So when you say you're buying a $1 million plus home with hard money, you know the numbers must be good because we know how much hard money costs and how that all works with the interest. But let's put some perspective to it. So for somebody who's listening, who's like, okay, you bought it with hard money, um, that's great. But aren't you paying like $20,000 of interest on that hard money? So
Yep.
how do those numbers make sense? Are you eating that cost for the first few
Yeah.
months?
So So let's just break it down. I have no problem sharing this deal. I think the more transparent, I always try to be as transparent as possible. I bought the house for 1.4 million. Tyler and I did, so we put down 10%, and then we put $280,000 into the property, and so we're going to refinance it. We were paying 8,000 a month in hard money costs, and I think we're into it for about 6 or 7 months, so around 60 something thousand of holding costs.
Okay.
But the property appreciated around $1 million
You're
since we
kidding
bought
me.
it.
So
Yeah,
so you're into this thing for like what, 1.7
yeah,
ish?
right around there. And I have it like being nice. I have it at 2.5 because there's no 9,000 square foot houses in that area that are totally remodeled. And so there's a few that are on the market in the $3 million range, and especially that license is worth at least 100,000 on the property alone. And so, we're going to do really well with that one. Our mortgage, when we refinance, it's going to be around 75 to 8 grand a month. And last month was our first like real launch month, and we brought in over $42,000 in revenue with Airbnb.
Incredible. Like, absolutely incredible, man. Like, the cash flow from that one property blows away guys' portfolios who have 50 properties. Like, it just it's bizarre to me. So, is that because it's the best time of the year for Vegas, like traveling season, you think, or do you expect pretty consistently those types of months?
I think we could do honestly, I think we could do better.
Nice.
Just because we had a lot of hiccups with this house, the licensing and then the city busting our chops a little bit. And things break a lot in a 9,000 square foot house, and there's going to be a lot of expenses, but there's nothing like the house. And
Yeah.
so when you have a big group of 15 guys that want to go on a bachelor party or a family reunion and they need a big house and they go on Airbnb and you search the whole east side of Las Vegas and ours is the first one that comes up and it's really the only big one. People are like, yeah, I want to book that. And like the pricing of I think we have it on for like almost 25 to 3 grand a night. They just don't care.
Yeah.
They just they're like, we'll pay it, we'll gladly pay it. It's actually cheaper to pay that than to get 7, 8 hotel rooms at 300, 400 a night. And so, when in speculation, it makes sense.
I love that. That's amazing, dude. So that makes sense now. So you guys can understand where he's coming from for how do I buy this, number one, but how do I go above and beyond to where everyone wants to book it? Like, keep that thing occupied, keep that cash flow rolling in, and then rinse and repeat. Are you going to
Yeah,
be able to find another deal like that in Las Vegas?
I don't know, but you know what's funny, Mike? It's like everyone's like, "Well, you're only going to get bachelor parties to stay there, and you're only going to get this," and I'm like, maybe. And then it hit me like by having a house like this, we've gotten so many crazy offers of people who want to film commercials there. They want to do an event there. They want to do photo shoots. They want to stay there. It's like a huge networking tool that we never expected to happen. And we have all these influencers who want to go in there and take pictures and use it and shout out our property. And so it's kind of like taking on a whole life of its own having this thing where people are coming up to me and they're like, "Hey, I saw your house. The thing's awesome. Can we go and take a tour of it? Can we take pictures?" And we never expected that. We just thought it was going to be a rental property, but now it's turned into something totally different. And I would like to do this other places, not just here, where I can do one in Arizona or Texas, and I could go use it, and then hey, and just say, "Hey, kind of, I have like this line of properties across the country."
It's smart. I mean, why not, right? Because nobody's stopping you from doing it. Obviously, the regulation's the only thing that you might have to worry about. And so, what are you looking for in other markets? Because I heard you say Mississippi. I know you're looking in other markets. So, what are you looking for?
I just look for deals that like cash flow well and that that I walk into some equity with just to play it safe.
Right,
Like I would never like that. We'll use that big one. I would have never spent 300, 400,000 over market value for it.
right.
I felt like we got a good deal on the buy, and that's super important in real estate. And so what I'm doing now is just it's cool because this has turned into like a whole nother business of me helping other entrepreneurs and real estate investors, and they're bringing me deals. And they're like, "Hey, Jason, you want to partner on this? Do you want to buy this from me?" And so I'm getting my DMs are getting pretty active, and people are like, "Hey, I got this deal in Mississippi. It's a creative finance deal." I love creative finance deals because you don't need a loan. And in Mississippi, it was I don't know 20,000 to buy into it, and it cash flowed pretty well. And I was like, you can't do it unless you try it. And so I'll try it, and if it works, great. If not, then I'll sell it. But I'm just testing out different markets.
Yeah, that's the key, man, is you can't be afraid to take that action. So I love that because that's a lot of risk. I mean, for most people to get that far into a property, it's like, what if this? What if that? It's like,
Yeah,
well,
the
what if
what
I never
if,
did it,
right?
right? I,
I know. I hate the what ifs. I'm
uh,
not a what if person.
yeah.
Like I moved to Vegas when I was 21. I moved by myself, one suitcase. Let's go, moving here. And I'm not a what if person. I'm a pull the trigger and then figure it out after.
Yep, yep. Me as well. Jump off the cliff and figure out if you
Hope for
got
the
the parachute
best.
on the way home.
Yeah, right.
Awesome, dude. Well, what else is important for an Airbnb? Because I think a few of your properties have pools. Does that add a ton of value for people who are staying out here, especially?
Yeah, so I'll dive into it a little bit. So when this is a question I get asked a lot, like what do you look for? You need to one find a market that's super popular or maybe an up and coming market. And so what we did was we didn't buy our properties right next to the Vegas Strip because the Vegas Strip, those areas aren't the best, right? That's the Spring Valleys and the East Side. They're not the best areas to buy real estate in. And so we figured, what if we bought properties in the better parts, but they're 20 minutes away? And it's a lot. And you can sell that on the listing. Look, it looks far, but it's really not far, and you're getting a way better experience. And so that's what I would recommend. Don't just go buy in the heart of the city because it might be saturated. And then you need to start looking at markets that aren't oversaturated, like states like Texas and Arizona. There's no rules there, but it's a very saturated short-term rental market. So you might go down one street and there's 50 of them all over the place. And so where I operate, there's licenses. So there's a restriction on how many in the whole area, which is great because it won't get oversaturated ever.
Great for the
Um,
guy who has 10 of them already.
right, I have the licenses on it, so I'm good.
Right.
But so that's the difficult part of people jumping into the business of what market do you want to hit and how do you attack that market. And so my advice would be go after a market that isn't totally oversaturated, like the Floridas and all that stuff, like anything by the beach and the water. You're going to see a ton of oversaturation, which is okay. Like it's still probably a good investment, but you got to start thinking outside the box because Airbnb's been going for a while of what's like the next cool town to pop up, like, and take wherever you think that is and start kind of drawing like a circle around it and trying to break into a new market. I think that is the way to go.
I think that's smart. So you're staying ahead of the curve versus like, okay, everyone figured this out right here. It's
Yep.
oversaturated. We're going to kind of go a little bit outside or find a new spot. I think that's brilliant. And another thing, man, it was kind of interesting about the states that you had just mentioned there. There's something about all those states. I don't know if anybody else caught this. There's no state income tax. All of the
Right.
states that you mentioned, there's no state income
Right.
tax.
That's a good point. I didn't, I just said it kind of blindly, but it's like the wild, wild west. There's no rules.
Yeah,
I actually have one in Kansas City too. I tested that market. There's no rules. And it doesn't do the Henderson ones crush any other market, or in my opinion, that people that I've talked to,
right.
just because Vegas is the mecca of tourism. But I did one in Kansas City, and it does fine. Like, and I'm not a greedy person. I'm like, I wish I did a little better. It covers the mortgage. It cash flows very well. I don't have to touch it. I hired a property manager to run it for me, and I have another rental in my portfolio. If I ever want to go to Kansas City, I could block out a weekend and go to Kansas City.
I
Um,
stayed in a 5,000 square foot house with a giant pool, a suburb of Kansas City. Incredible Airbnb. This was like 3 years ago for a bachelor party. And they were getting at the time, like it was absurd. It was like $1,000 a night, but there were like eight of us guys. And we're like, oh, well, like it's cheaper than going to a hotel. And plus, we're going to be able to use this house as entertainment, big backyard, all this stuff. So it just made total sense.
I agree, and that's why I create them. It's funny, Mike. I'm not a big Airbnb guy. When I go on vacation, I don't use a lot of them. I don't know why. I just uh, I just never got into them, or just never. I've stayed in maybe on three my whole life. Maybe I should try them a little bit more, or do some trades of other hosts. But when with mine, I want to make sure that the guests have a good experience. And we've gotten a ton of repeat customers back, or people tell their friends about our houses, which is a nice compliment. And yeah, it's been fun.
That's cool, man. What do you say to somebody who's like, "Well, Jason, yeah, I don't want to take all the risks to buy the property. Maybe I'll just arbitrage it. Maybe I'll just rent it from this guy for 1,500 and throw it on Airbnb for 2,500."
All right, we're going the arbitrage route. All right,
I had
so
to.
yeah, it's fine. I didn't like the arbitrage method. when I first got into the business. I understand why people do it, but for me, I'm a real estate investor, and so that business is not real estate investing. So you're subleasing the property and you're trying to make cash flow between your rent and what you can produce on it with as a short-term rental. Now, my mind changed when I went and spoke in Houston, and you meet people who are arbitraging 50, 60, 75 to 100 units, and then you're like, wow, like the money that these guys are bringing in is significant. But it's just two separate businesses. So if you want to invest in real estate, then you got to do kind of what I do. But if you want to arbitrage and people younger, newer students or people who are new to investing, I think it's a great I think it's a great avenue to kind of learn the business and then take that cash and buy the real estate. But I tried to arbitrage one. I've partnered with a few guys who were showing me, and I was like, I want to try one. I'll fund it, and it's a lot of work for just not as much profit, in my opinion. Like the real profit in real estate is the appreciation of the asset, and with arbitrage, it's a lot of risk, it's a lot of work, and I don't know. It's just not worth it to me to make that $1,000 cash flow a month to
Yeah.
set every up by the like because everyone's like, oh, I could rent it for 1,500 and then I could arbitrage it for up to 4,000 3,500.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but you're forgetting about you have to buy the furniture, which is super expensive. So that's $20,000,
So your
right? So
cash flow, which is the lease with the person you maybe arbitrage with. Hopefully, you can get a longer lease, but yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
now it's like, yeah, I made 40,000. I'm like, you only made 20 because you're not telling everybody about the furniture. So I mean, I'm sure you see it everywhere. Everyone is
Oh,
like
for sure.
teaching the arbitrage, right? That's like the cool, sexy new. I don't know. I feel like it's a shortcut real estate, not a scam, but it's like a little hook to
Yeah,
get people on, right? And I don't I in my course that I released, I didn't teach it. I didn't
yeah.
teach it. I just it's not something I do, so I felt like I couldn't sell something that I don't actually do.
Yeah, no, I think to each their own, right? But at the end of the day, I totally see where you're coming from. There's the investor mindset and the consumer mindset. It's like people who own thousands of units, but they don't even own their own home. Like it's like that's a whole different conversation. But the same thing applies. Is like for you, you're like, well, I have Airbnbs. They're great, but I don't necessarily even stay at them when I travel as much. It's all about preference, and I think ownership is definitely a great way to go. So it's pretty cool that you're teaching people how to do that. Is there
Yeah.
anything? Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean it's like I'm a real estate investor. So like if I'm an investor, I want to teach people how I built wealth. And like I didn't build wealth by subleasing apartments or subleasing other rentals. I built wealth because I bought the real estate asset and I rent it. And I never sold it. So I'm just keeping it. And in my opinion, that's the best way to be successful. And so doing that along with some of the other side things that I do with being an agent, flipping and doing some wholesales here and there, there's just nothing better than looking at your portfolio and being like, yeah, hey, there's a few $1,000,000 in air worth of real estate that I could sell one day or I could keep and pass down to my kids. And it's a very powerful thing to have.
100%, dude. I love it. It's a muscle that I'm changing, but I have to ask, is it working so good to where you're like, I'm not gonna change anything, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing, or are you pulling some other tools out of your belt to maybe start to find some off-market property, partnering with guys who are? Um,
It's a great
talk.
question. I mean, so let's talk about the market shift, right? We've seen a huge market shift here in Vegas. Things have kind of hit the yellow, right? People are not paying crazy numbers anymore over list price. But I don't know if you follow this. Obviously, I do. The rental market is continuing to increase, and we're going to have a real rental problem here soon where if things people lose their jobs or people can't afford to pay their rent anymore and these rents are crazy, and so a lot of people taking advantage of that and they're charging outrageous rents and people are paying it. So we'll see what happens. But to answer your question, I haven't bought a real properties in 8 months, just because I kind of hit the pause button, and I've just been saving and waiting to see kind of how this market shifts. And I think you got to be smart, right? When you fire away, you got to be correct, because if you're not, you could really hurt yourself. And so I've bought a few creative finance deals because they were small entries and I don't have to get a loan in my name. And but I do think the rental market will stay strong, especially in Vegas and Henderson, because a lot of people still moving here and
Hmm.
getting out of those more expensive places. But I don't think you could go wrong with buying rental properties with the mindset that you know that there is some room there to, if things do go sour a little bit, that you're going to be able to lower your rent and still pay your mortgage, because that is the business. You want somebody to pay the rent and that rent to pay off your mortgage, and you do that for so long that one day it's gone. The mortgage payment is completely gone, and now you have a paid off asset, and you could just sit and back and be like, look, I could sell this thing, I could keep renting it for income. But that's the business.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good point, and I love that about the rentals is because yeah, you're free once the cash flow exceeds your living, and then the rest is just the cherry on top. So
Exactly.
it's a beautiful thing.
Yep.
So with the market, so obviously people are still moving to Vegas specifically. What are you seeing out here? Are you seeing you said in the yellow, are you seeing kind of a like a stop, a slowdown? Obviously, houses sitting on the market more, or like what's going on out here from somebody who's more active in this market?
I think it's like a compared to like a washing machine, because one day I'm like, wow, there's a lot of more listings, but then I list something and I get full price offer, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe I don't know. So I think the properties that are priced correctly and that are nicely done are going to sell. But things that are like, I walked into this house the other day. It was $1 million. I'm like, this is not $1 million house.
Yeah.
It's a 5 bedroom with nothing. There's no upgrades. Like, so it's like you have to kind of go with your gut, and you're like, like this house isn't gonna sell for 1 million. It's not gonna sell. Like, this guy's in trouble if he thinks
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
gonna sell for $1 million. And so a lot of people who bought their house for 750 last year, thinking they could just make a quick buck and flip it and sell it now, I don't think that's gonna happen. So my business is really reliant on being an agent. I take that income and I use it to buy as many rentals as I can. But those rentals now are kind of really, there's so much equity in them, and I bought them so long ago, and that they're going to be fine. They're going to be stable, and I have good tenants in them.
Yeah, I think reality's setting in for some people who were optimistic about the prices, like oh, like buying on the fact that the market's just going up 5% every month or whatever the situation may be. I've started to see some of that same stuff in our market or in our area where it's like this person just has been on the market for 2 months. They are finally starting to get a little bit more realistic, but it's not going anywhere at that price.
Right? It's funny because you live in Inspirata, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so I would say 6 months. I think there was only like 6 houses for sale in Inspirata, and now it's like 40 something.
they're everywhere now.
They're everywhere, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now, like there was like a bunch of houses, like the more expensive ones, like 1.2 and Inspirata. There's not any like over 1 million right now for sale. And so now everybody's like, okay, well, let's come back down to reality of like a house in Inspirata isn't $1 million. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
we cast a fairly wide net with our marketing, and we're direct to seller, so we're running ads and stuff like that. And I think the whole time I've lived here in Clark County, I've maybe had 2 or 3 leads in my neighborhood in this area, and I think we've had 10 in the last 5 or 10 months, like 5 to
Wow.
6 months. And so we're starting to see people like who are listed calling cash buying companies versus like, oh, it's I'm good. I'm listed. I'm going to sell it. So I think reality is definitely setting in, and I think it's a great time to be an investor.
Oh, 100, you nailed it right there. Now, the people that are calling into you, are they panicky, or are they just like, "Hey, I just want to get a realistic number. I'm not trying to be greedy." Like, what are those people like?
It's a combination. You know, the people out here are a lot less panicky because they have equity,
Yep.
versus some people in other markets. Their situations all vary, of course. These people are not as like urgent. They're just like the expectation wasn't set.
Okay.
The agent was over optimistic, like, hey, let's list it for this price. And I was told by my friend, they're like, I wouldn't have listed that for I would have listed that for $100,000 less.
Right.
And so it's just kind of a letdown. Some of these sellers who were overpromised and are getting under delivered, just on the market shifting, and the agent just may not have known. Uh, but that brings up a good thought. Something that a lot of agents that I see happening is they never get in investing into real estate. And I heard you say, and I've heard a lot of other agents do this. You're rolling your commissions into some of your deals. So what do you say to an agent who's like, they're crushing it? Maybe they're having a lot of success. What do you say to that person?
I think being a real estate agent is the dumbest profession that you could possibly be in ever. And here's why. Why would I, as an agent, if I saw an opportunity to make a lot of money or own real estate, why would I give it to my client when I can when I can take advantage of the knowledge of how to do it? And I've asked this question to my broker, Josh Galindo, like the biggest guys, and they all say the same thing. We don't know why either. It's baffling to me that I have people in my office that have been doing this 30 years and they don't own any rental properties. And they're still grinding that realtor grind. Like the realtor grind ends because if you don't have a client, you don't make any money. You don't have a business.
That's right.
And so I figured that out right away. Like within the first month of me getting my license, I knew what I was here to do. I'm an investor first, and then I will be an agent to fund the investor investments. And so I don't know why, but what's going to happen is these agents who really are, remember, these hot dog, I call them hot shots, that were listing the properties and getting 10 offers and being a you know what on the phone. That's going to end very
Oh
quickly.
yeah, it
And
already
it's going to
is.
be people like me and you who know how to structure deals and the creative financing deals that are coming when there's not any equity gap and you can't sell your house. And now these people are stuck and now they're going upside down and they're going to have to sit down and have a hard conversation of you're going to have to kind of deed this over to somebody who knows what they're doing because you have no shot of keeping this thing afloat. You're going to eventually drown in this payment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's so true, man. And it took me, like I said, a few years. We bought 10 properties last month, which sounds ridiculous for me to even say that because everyone else is kind of like a little bit freaked out. But we're just doing our thing, man. We got a deal machine. We're pumping out the marketing. The leads are coming in. We're seeing better opportunities. We're seeing some of the best deals that we've ever seen. And
That's
so it's
awesome.
like, well, why wouldn't we, buy those deals and keep, and this is how you build wealth. And so how important is it, like, I know you figured this out early on, but how important is it for somebody to find someone who just knows what's going on, who gets it, who can rub shoulders with that person
Yeah,
to show them the way?
I had so it was a little different for me because my broker and my brokerage, they went through the crash. So these are people that they got destroyed. 5-6 years prior to for me getting my license. So I understand that they were very hesitant to redo this again and build up. So, but scared money don't make money, and
That's right.
so the mentors that I've had in my life, they were like very entrepreneur, business minded people. Where my parents were teachers, and they were like, "Hey, be a teacher and you get summers off, stable paycheck, retirement, that kind of route." And I knew right away I wasn't that type of person. And so I would definitely recommend to find somebody that does the business. Like you can't go and get mentored by somebody who actually isn't in the pool swimming. And I see
Right.
that so often where like I was just on the phone yesterday, I got a call from a guy and he's like, "Well, this agent told me that this was the a really good Airbnb." And I said, "Well, how many Airbnbs does she own?" He's like, "None." I said, "Well, then how can she know that this is a really good Airbnb. Like people just listen to people because they say something. Like I like show some proof here of why like you're gonna mentor me. And so that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, obviously you are now helping people. You're showing people the way on Airbnb, and you've recently came out with a course for it. And I think it would be a no-brainer for people to learn more and work with you because obviously you've mastered it. So, where can people learn more about that and kind of dive deeper with you?
Okay, so obviously the short-term rentals is a huge topic in real estate because it's the best cash flowing business that you could do with real estate. Multifamily might be better, but it's on that top level, right? So when I was doing it, I was getting so much attention and questions of how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? And I was like, somebody was like, you need to build a course so you don't have to, s- just so you could stop taking the phone calls. Because I was spending so much time explaining the business to people. And then I realized no one is going to take action and do the business. And it's just a huge waste of time. And so I built this course out because I wanted to educate people on the business and be no BS. Like this is a tough business and it's expensive to get into it. And if you still want to do it, then we can move forward. And so I built the course and that's what I'm doing now. I'm like, step one, take this course and learn
Yeah.
the business. Because when I call you and tell you that your furniture broke because you bought cheap furniture, you're going to realize, okay, I'm not going to buy cheap furniture up front. I'm going to buy durable furniture that's a little bit more expensive. So it doesn't cost me more money down the line. And so I built this out. It was very difficult to do, a lot harder than I expected because you're basically giving every single little detail in a full business. And I went from I think I did it a little differently where I didn't just build a course of I'm sitting in front of a computer screen talking about it. I took half of the course and I went through my own properties. And
Oh
so I
wow.
video tour each level property that I have. I did 5 video tours and I go through the house of every single little thing in my house. Why I put this doorbell, what kind of doorbell it is, what kind of light goes on the front, what kind of door handle, what kind of key entry lock, the systems behind it. What pool cleaner do we use? Which hot tubs do we buy? All of that. And so I think when people go through it, they're going to really be like, okay, wow, like that's super thoughtful of the business of to be successful in the business. And so, yeah, a lot of realtors are reaching out. They want to learn how to do it. And so I'm like, look, if you just take the course, take a few hour course and learn it, and then you could relay to your clients, then you'll have something. And then it's a win win for everybody.
Yeah, guys. So obviously, there's a ton of value with learning from somebody who has been there, done that. And I'm not gonna lie, Jason. Like I learned so much from you, so I'm forever grateful. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have even known where to start. But
Well,
as I w-
let's dive into yours first. Let's what tell me about your Airbnb.
Yeah, so I mean, we were from Nebraska, so we ended up buying an Airbnb off market from a referral. So I just posted online, "Hey, anybody selling a property? I'm looking to pay a little bit more top dollar because I want to do an Airbnb."
So you were
Um,
marketing for an Airbnb that was already running, and you took it over.
No, no. So I
Okay.
was marketing for an off-market property. So
Okay.
the property lead came in. I negotiated a deal with the seller, and ended up uh, getting a price that made sense. And then we went in and we gutted the whole place.
Okay.
We ripped out all the bathrooms, the flooring, everything. We even ripped out the subfloor unexpectedly because we found out after we dug into it that it had some water damage. And long story short, went through it for quite a bit of money.
So
But
what'd you
we
buy it for, and what's your rehab?
Yeah, so we bought it for 200.
Okay.
We're gonna be into it for probably 55,000 on the rehab
With or without furniture?
without furniture.
Okay. So here you go.
We'll be into it for another probably 12,000 on
Okay.
furniture, a little bit more.
All right.
And so yeah, we're all in. Like we're all
Yep.
into it, and just learned a lot throughout the journey of it. Is like the details, right? Like the door lock. What happens if the battery dies? With the cameras, what happens if the
Yeah.
battery
Yeah.
dies? Like all these little things that were like, how do you think about all these things? Like, could somebody just give me a checklist, or like just give me something to where I don't have to like. It was 6 months of, I would say, Every conversation my wife and I had, and she was just like, we were just annoyed with it. We were like, okay, we just got to get through it because we learned a lot. Okay, it doesn't have to be like that. I don't believe. And like I'm talking like it was such a bad deal. It was such a great experience, and it was a lot of fun. Um, but it was my wife's baby. And I didn't have a ton of interest in buying one in Nebraska. Now, if it was in Vegas and it was like a property like your guys's, like I'm a lot more excited for that. But at the end of the day, man, like the listing goes live, we see the results, the fruits of the labor, and I'm like, okay,
Nah,
it
right now it's fun. Now it's
it
the
was
fun
it
time
was
with
it
it.
was
But
awesome. Like I can't wait for this thing to get booked. I can't wait for the cash flow to start coming in because uh, you know it's going to be market rents of 1,800 regular, and we should be able to bring close to 3 grand in a month. It's nothing crazy. It's not going to get rich overnight, anything like that. But at the end of the day, it's cash flow and it's equity and it's
yep.
tax. It's all the benefits of owning real
And you
estate.
could use it. Right, that's like a big one that everyone forgets. It's funny because I saw your listing and you use Evolve, and
Yeah.
that's the one that I'm using in Mississippi. They're a big, strong company.
How's your experience been so far?
Um, I can't really. It's only been going for a few months, so
Too
I
too
can't
too, too
really.
soon.
It's too soon. I can't
Okay,
give you a full review just
that's
yet, but I can soon.
cool. Yeah, that's fair. I'm in the same boat. So we just launched. Um, so yeah, guys. Yeah, obviously, Jay, you have a ton of experience, man, and thank you so much for sharing. For anybody who's watching, you definitely should share this. You should definitely check out Jason's course. We'll drop a link in the chat as well. That way you can look into it. Anything else? Any final thoughts
No,
or anything,
Mike,
guys?
I love what you're doing, man, and it's so funny because I talk about you all the time about wholesaling and wholesale marketing, and people are like, oh, I'm gonna do it, and what's it like? Who are the people that are successful with it? And I think you're the only person, honestly, that I know I know a few, but like you are the person that I bring up all the time. I'm like, I know this guy, Mike. Like, this guy is a stone cold killer, structured guy. Like, if like this guy will eat egg whites every single day if that's his structure, and he won't break that structure. And so when I tell people that, I'm like, you have no shot of being successful with it because you're all over the place. Like, I know you have to be, and I can't even do it because it's so grueling and structured and difficult. And so I commend what you do because it's very difficult. It's a difficult business.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a mutual feeling. I honestly was going to say I feel sorry for all of those calls because I think every time somebody was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about Airbnb," I'm like, "Jason Griggs." I'm like, "Jason Griggs, here's his phone number. Just call him." And I'm like,
Yep.
"Oh shoot, Jason's going to hate me later when he gets all these
No,
calls."
no,
But
no. I'm happy to help, man. It's pretty cool, right? Because once you find like your little niche of like a lot of people like I had no clue who you were, and I was like, oh, cool. I guess I'm like the Airbnb guy around town, and
yeah,
that's okay. That's fun.
yeah. I mean, it's good to be known for the niche, and for anybody who's watching, it's like, yeah, choose your niche and just go all in and commit and decide and stay disciplined. I don't even think of myself as that disciplined, but at the end
Oh,
of the
Mike,
day,
I know you're disappointed. And we know each other, but we don't really know each other. But I could just
yeah,
tell by
yeah,
hanging out with you and meeting you a few times that you need to be super structured to do what you do. Right? Like you're right. You even showed me your schedule and your regimen. And I was like, yeah, there's no shot I could ever keep up with that. But that's why you're successful because you can do the hard things that a lot of other people can't do.
yeah. I mean, it's showing up when you don't want to, right? It's like showing up when it's a holiday or it's a weekend and you have to take care of some business, or like, hey, I just got back from Nashville for the week, and we had a situation, and I have a team who's out there doing amazing things, but sometimes you got to step in. Sometimes you got to make that call that's not going to be a fun call to make, or whatever the situation may be. That's the beauty of owning a business,
Yes, sir.
and I
Yes,
wouldn't trade it
sir.
for anything.
Let's go. So what
Beautiful.
so what is your real quick before we what is your prediction here in the next 6 months with Vegas?
Man, that's a tough one. My prediction is I just think that it levels off. It's actually interesting. It may drop even a little bit, maybe 5%. I don't know, But what I have noticed and I follow really closely is what are the hedge funds doing?
Right. And they
The hedge
stop a lot of
funds,
them.
yeah, they stopped buying, and the hedge funds had such a strong pull on the entire market share because as I'm watching Zillow prices just go boom, 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 boom every single week, literally every week, especially in my neighborhood. And then I start to take a peek at them again, and even our house's estimate has went down like a little bit, not a lot,
Wow.
not a
Probably for the
lot.
first time ever,
The
right?
first time, yeah,
Yep.
we bought our house 2 years ago. It's went up 25%, not even exaggerating, since we purchased. And so to see it go down, it makes you realize that, okay, the comps are changing a little bit. The optimistic comps in the spring are not going to be the comps in September
Yep.
that you're going to want to buy from. So we're just adjusting, we're adjusting our buy box just a little bit, maybe 5 to 10%. Obviously, the lower we can get it, the better. And at the end of the day, as long as you're following the market down or leading the market down, you should be just fine. You don't want to get caught being optimistic, though, especially in Vegas.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny. I looked on the new on market deals. I found a house that I've been wanting for years. Probably for 5 years, I've wanted this house. I got a bid twice, and I originally wanted for 640. Now it's worth a million. Now it's on for a million, and I'm gonna sit and wait to see if this thing could go down a bunch and go after it again. Because
Throw
I
them a
think it's
throw them a creative offer. See what they think about
yeah,
that.
yeah. I would love. I'm definitely gonna do that. Like in the next 5 minutes.
ACC over in ACC.
No, this one is the address is 200 Sunset Shower. Check it out. It's a really cool house.
Okay, cool. Well, if anybody here wants to check out a sweet house, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Um,
don't outbid me.
it,
I've wanted this house for a while.
we won't talk about the numbers, but no, man, it's super awesome. Any
Mike, thanks for
final?
having me, man.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. And if anyone needs help with short-term rentals, I can definitely help you. I've helped people all over the place build them out and organize it and set them up. So happy to help.
beautiful. Go follow Jason Griggs, guys.
Thanks,
We'll talk
Mike.
soon.
You have a great weekend, buddy.
All right, you too. See ya.
Bye.